All right, we will start the June 4th Select Board meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag's behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Silence the phone.
Yeah, silence your. Yeah, we're excited to have lots of people here today, but if I could just ask that, one, you silence your phone, and two, that you not have private conversations or, conversations in the audience while the meeting's running, because that makes it very difficult for Dawn to hear what's being said and to actually record. So if you do need to have a side conversation, if you would step outside, we would appreciate it. All right, manifests.
Oh,
What do we got?
yep. I'll make a motion to approve the accounts payable manifest of June 4th, 2018, and the payroll manifest of June 5th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Who is that? Ben? Okay.
Ben.
Thank you.
Trustee Ben. Go. Okay. We'll do minutes. Just in addition to the 521 non-public, we have 4-9, 423, and 5-7 as well. Okay, so whoever makes the motion can,
And those are all in your packets. I have the 521 minutes for both, but the rest of them are in your packets.
okay, okay. All right, I'll take a motion on minutes.
What was it?
I have duplicates, so I don't know that I have all the right ones. So what were the dates?
So it's the 521 for public, it's 5 here. I got it written down right there.
Because I have non-public from the 21st.
Yeah, so we got this, and then these 3 additional dates.
Okay, I have 2 non-publics for the 21st, and then 4/9/23. Yeah, I'm missing the 9th, 4/9. Do you have any more of those? 4/9? Okay.
They may be unfortunately intermingled,
Yeah.
in the rest of your packets.
Yeah, me too. April 23rd.
I believe I have them on my key.
I'm pretty sure I've read them already.
Hard copy packets.
Is this all done?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here you go.
Are you sure,
So you
Tommy?
had the 21st?
That's 4-9.
Yeah, I don't have one.
21st.
You got it.
Oh yeah, I remember this one.
You got the
It's not, oh, it's not a touchscreen.
Nottingham.
Yeah, no, I read those. I read those. Okay.
All right, who's making a motion?
I will make a motion to accept or approve? Approve, right, yeah. Approve the public minutes of May 21st, 2018, and the non-public minutes from April 9th, April 23rd, May 7th, and May 21st, 2018, as amended.
Second.
Anybody have any discussion on that before we vote on any of those? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. All right, boards and committees. Budget hasn't met, right?
No, they'll be meeting next month,
Okay.
July.
Cool. Planning.
Planning, so we had a joint meeting of the planning board and the zoning board a couple of weeks ago. Most of the meeting was discussion around the presentation. Russ and Chris came to review his suggestions for edits and updates to the zoning ordinances to get them consistent with current law and kind of in sync with each other, and to fill in some gaps in our current ordinances that aren't addressed, such as, limitations on adult entertainment establishments in town, things like that. And it was a pretty productive discussion, so that was time well spent. We also discussed, they're gonna put out a call for public participation in the master plan review, and Charlene had come to, and she had reminded them that she was gonna be available to participate in that as well. There weren't no applications were heard. In fact, I think one was withdrawn, the other one
Withdrawn,
was
yeah.
postponed. Yeah, I believe so.
It was withdrawn,
Yeah.
the one over on Ledge Farm.
It's pretty much, did I forget anything major? Do you remember? No. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, any questions?
We're gonna meet on Friday.
Yeah, Marston, we're gonna meet on Friday, which is good. Excellent. Okay, no other boards or committees, so let's go to Chris.
Let's see, field work with our new auditors is underway. I have one piece for you. Actually, Donna's the only one that has to sign it, but I'm gonna give you all copies of it so you can think about it and send her any thoughts you have. It's essentially it's a fraud questionnaire. What are you aware of and that may be a source of loss? It's a standard thing that management has to do with an audit. Donna will have to fill it out and sign it, but you should all have a crack at throwing anything at Donna. And Donna also have the engagement letter for the firm that I need you to review and sign too.
All right.
So those are, just pull yours out of there. Doesn't have to be done tonight, but, so we're off and running there. Let's see, our interim building inspector's in place. Schedule seems to be working okay. We're pulling together all right with what we've got there. The new PD cruiser should be here in a couple of weeks. They're working out taking the gear out of the old one and all that business. And the fire department's getting closer to being ready to come to you about a final decision on a truck. Town meeting authorized the purchase of a new truck. They've been working on that process. We've joined a buying group, national buying group, that's kind of streamlining that process for them a lot. It was a free thing that we jumped into. It's for municipalities. It's based in Texas, but they're able to get kind of a la carte pricing on the truck they're looking for, that's already been kind of bid out. So it looks like it's going to be a win for us. We'll see
Okay.
in the final analysis, but be a couple more meetings anyway before they're ready to come to you, but they're spending a lot of time on it. Let's see, what else? The planning board wrote to you, and we had a little bit of email traffic late last week about it. We can come back to it. I just wanted to remind ourselves to do that later. We can, if we have public here, we can do their stuff first.
Yeah.
We didn't actually all we didn't get communication from everybody about it, so we still need to act on that tonight.
Yeah.
And same thing with truck for the highway department. I think Ben's probably ready to talk us through what he's done there. We can do that later too, but.
Okay.
And then we're having non-public on a couple things to finish, that I think you're aware of.
Yep. Okay, any questions for Chris on any topics? Totally appreciate the Friday updates. Very helpful. Thank you. All right, let's go on to building permits on private class 6 roads. Okay, do you want to kind of give us a recap of where we are, what we need to do there, Chris?
Well, we talked 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago about
It was our last
law.
meeting.
Yeah,
and
last
the,
meeting.
it was the last meeting. And you kind of gave me the guidance to go off and create a policy to do what exactly, we're not sure yet, but generally speaking, map out a policy that fits with the law requiring your approval of all building permits on private roads, and the zoning ordinance, which also requires special approval for buildings on class 5 and class 6 and private roads. We discussed that at the joint meeting of the planning board and zoning board, and I told them I'd be coming back to them with a draft of something as well. They were receptive to that concept and the direction that you were heading, so we're on the right track, but we do need to deal with those that are in the works now. We have 3 permit applications pending for residences on private roads, nothing on class 6, so we can just talk about private roads in this context. We have a policy that we've been following. We've identified that it's not perfect. But these are folks that are, are going through the steps that we're telling them to go through. They're following the rules, applying where they need to apply, and we just need to, we need some short-term decisions on how we're gonna handle those permit applications.
Yeah.
That's short enough. Is that how you want me to box in the conversation, or?
Yeah, I think that's good. So the decision, the immediate decision before us tonight is, what do we do with those, about the 3 pending?
Yeah.
And I know that there are differing opinions on the board, so let's open it up to the board to talk about that. Who wants to go first?
So I have a question. So it looks like the 3 cases are being heard by the ZBA at their next meeting, which is on June 19th. But of those 3, it looks like only 1 has actually been in process and has met with the ZBA prior. Is that correct? And the other 2 are new, coming forward before the ZBA.
Yeah, my recollection, this may not be exactly right, but the one that was there, they couldn't really proceed on it for procedural reasons. It wasn't it was like somebody had sent a lawyer, but we didn't have the property owner's permission to listen to the lawyer kind of question. It was a ticky-tack procedural kind of thing.
Okay.
And that was compounded or confused by our discussions and things that we're uncovering and trying to get our heads around regarding what's legal and what's, so that, those 2 things led to a continuation of that case before the ZBA. The other 2 we're just directed there because that's what the ordinance tells us that we're supposed to do. And so they were not issued permits because they need variances first.
Okay.
And they're going before the zoning board because of they don't have road frontage on class 5.
Correct.
So it's not, other than the 1 case, and if that was just, it's not, I mean, we could we could view these three at our next meeting before they go to the ZBA.
We could if we decided that that's what we wanted to do. Time-wise,
Yeah.
there would be time.
We wouldn't be costing them any time if we were to
Right,
do
right.
that, is the,
Right. Right.
And the other thing, so before a building permit, the law requires that before a building permit is issued, which a building permit has yet been issued, because they have to go for the zoning ordinance, they're required to provide proof that they've amended, that the deed has been recorded, that there's no municipality liability on the road. Correct?
correct.
And they know that.
Yes, that's a conversation that typically happens as part of the building inspection process, I mean, the permit application process. I think historically, we've not required that recording until a certificate of occupancy is issued. Just like an impact fee is paid at that point, but either way, it needs to be recorded.
Right, and it should be before the building permit is issued.
Yeah, if that's what the law says, then
That's what
that's
the law
fine, yeah.
says.
Yeah, we've got a boilerplate form for that, and it's pretty straightforward action.
Okay, anybody else have any questions?
Well, yeah, I had said in my previous email that I was in favor of doing the review. Not, and I am sensitive to the perception that we're changing the rules mid-process, but all I'm saying is that we just do the rule, right? That we meet our statutory obligation and do the review against, the criteria can be as simple as the existing process, in absence of the updated one that we need to develop. But we can look at the basic requirements of the RSA, such as, recording that, the waiver of municipal liability, just the basic things that are spelled out in the RSA. Just do those things, That way there's no, we're not changing the homeowner's path to completion. We're just simply fulfilling our obligation to do the review. Right.
Yeah. So, I fully acknowledge and respect the fact that we haven't been in compliance with the law in the past and that we need to get into compliance with the law. That is what it is. I am not in favor of having people been, told what the process is and then changing the rules of the game on them midstream. And, while I think it would be a good exercise for us to go through a review, I'm not sure that I want to make it, in the case of these three, a block. I think even before our next meeting, we have to have some discussions about what does our proper process look like, right? And what criteria are we going to be using to express an opinion? Because I don't know. Charlene, I think, has had the most exposure to, zoning and planning, but I haven't, and it's a very complicated area. So I'm not ready to rush into a, this is going to be our new, criteria list,
Right.
So, and I'm not ready to dive into this is our new policy. So that's my opinion. And this is a big topic, so everybody has to weigh in.
Well, I would have to agree with Tony. Three, we have, in order for the process to move forward for these three, we don't want to hold them up any more than absolutely necessary. So I'm along the lines of Tony.
I would have to agree.
So what would that review look like? What would we look at? What would we say? What would we base an opinion on?
Well, I don't think that in order to do this review, we don't have to have our process and our policy settled. Right? We're still exploring that. But the law simply requires that we do the review. So, of course, we do need some criteria to go by. In absence of anything else, we can just simply evaluate against the process we already have on hand until it's updated and finalized.
So what questions would we be asking, and what would we be looking for?
So we'd want to look at the road to see if the road needs to be improved upon. We should have the fire department go look at the road, make sure a truck can get down there. In some cases, in some roads in other towns, there's been a requirement that a sprinkler system be put into the house, as an example. Sometimes the towns may require that road be improved upon, and that's all within the requirement of the law. I think the other thing is that I think we need to make sure that that deed is properly reflected prior to the building permit and not at the certificate of occupancy.
Say that again, please.
The law requires that there be evidence that the deed, that there's been a record at the Registry of Deeds that is a notice that the municipality, the limit to the municipality for responsibility and liability of the road. And what Chris has explained, and that's supposed to be before the building permit is issued. Otherwise, we're taking on some, some amount of liability. And what Chris had explained is it's been at, for whatever reason, it's been at the certificate of occupancy. And that needs to change to conform to the law.
How long does that take to record that at the registry?
That's quick.
I don't know.
What is that, Chris?
It's quick. You can drive down there and do it in a day if you walk
So,
in.
so if we presented that requirement to these three applicants, it's something that they could accommodate easily enough without setting back their timetable? Yeah.
So I'm not in favor of presenting new requirements to the applicants at this point in time. I still think that there's a lot of gray areas, like when we say, we expect, or we want to see road improvements, we don't know what that means. When we say things like, we could ask people to have sprinklers, is that really something that we want to do? I think we have a lot of homework before we do it.
The law requires that it be not just for this particular applicant, but also for people who may purchase that house in the future, and that the safety, and that's why in some cases there's been the request for sprinkler systems.
So again, I think we have a lot of homework to do. And Chris, where are you with creating a draft?
Oh, it's probably halfway to being ready to show to anybody. I'm really just copying from other places. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. The tough parts are going to be how much kind of formal analysis do you want to do? Who do you want to do it? It's mostly road focused, so how in-depth do you want to get? I think is going to be the tricky part from a policy point of view, but process-wise, it's going to be pretty clean.
I think there's a lot of tricky parts, that's why I'm just hesitant to jump in full force.
No, I agree with that. I mean, we definitely got a lot of homework to do. And, you know, I can see how it may be premature as well to review these 3 applicants when we could miss something critical. And, you know, how would that expose us to any, you know, liability or other remediation down the road if, I don't know, in the event something happened that could be pointed back to us not properly reviewing
Yeah,
the applicant.
yeah,
So I don't know, I mean, I definitely see both sides of it.
yeah.
But really, all I'm advocating is for is just doing the review as the RSA. You know, working with what we got and do the review with just the basics that we are aware of and, you know, dotting those i's, crossing those t's.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a little bit like doing a performance evaluation on an employee that doesn't work for you and you don't know what they've been
Yeah.
doing, and now all of a sudden the deadline's coming up and you've got to, and
Yeah.
they don't even know that you're doing it, right?
Right,
And all of a
right.
sudden it's like, hey, Tony, you know, you gotta do Mary's performance evaluation, you don't know her, but you gotta get it done.
Right.
you know?
The, I just went and looked at the statute again to make sure. For private roads, the local governing body, which is you, needs to get review and comment by the planning board
Right.
as part of that,
Sure.
so,
As an advisory.
yeah.
So, as an advisory, yeah.
So that part has to come first. So is that how you're building the workflow?
Yeah.
Planning
yeah,
board
that's-
is-
yeah.
So our next meeting would be our next meeting is the 18th, is that correct?
Yes,
The night before the,
So that would be one night before. If we were to go to that route, we would have to have input from the planning board, right? We would either get that or not be able to discuss it as a group until the 18th, which is the night before. They all go before.
yeah, well, if they don't get a variance from the zoning board, it's a moot point, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's the multi-track of approval process that we've laid out for ourselves, it's in motion.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree that it's gonna be cleaned up and we've gotta bring ourselves into compliance of the law. I just, it doesn't sound right to say that we've not been in compliance this long, that, you know, another month or so isn't gonna hurt us, but again, I'm just worried about jumping in, not having all the facts, not having
Yeah.
ourselves together on it. Okay, so the question is, you know, do we want to insert ourselves with a review of the current 3 applicants? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, if we did that, what would that review look like specifically? And I think we have to answer question number 2 before we can answer question number 1. So specifically, assume we were going to do a review, specifically, what would that look like? What would we be looking for specifically? What would we be asking specifically?
the input from the planning board,
What would we be
fire
asking?
station.
What would we be asking the planning board to tell us?
So you'd want the planning board to look at it from a land use perspective, which they would do. The law calls out that it would be land use decisions under RSA 676, 15, and 17. Is the way that they would look at it. So it's all in the law, how it would be viewed.
Okay, so the planning board would give us their perspective, and then what would we do?
They would give us their advisement, and then we would, again, we would want to look at what the road conditions are. I think it would be in our best interest to have the fire chief look at the road.
What's the criteria that we would use to evaluate the road conditions?
Minimum width.
Yeah.
and grade. For starters. Doesn't have to be paved, but it has to be the proper width.
Do we have standards on that?
Can the fire truck get down the road safely?
Do we have, do we have specs, road specs?
We
Or do we go by
we
as-
do for new roads.
Yeah. Well, those specs are designed to accommodate life safety concerns, right?
Yeah, I mean, I presume they're designed to handle a whole bunch of things. It's a newly constructed road, you set a set of standards for, that's easier than retrofitting an old road to meet
Right,
those standards.
right.
That's, town road or private road. We've not given ourselves a standard for class 5 roads. We do what we think is best.
Right.
You've not, you would expose yourself to risk if you created a standard for your own roads and then failed to meet it. So there is no,
Right.
there's a standard for the construction of a new road as part of the subdivision regulations. I think that's where that lives. But not for ancient class 5 roads or private roads or class 6 roads.
Right.
Okay, what else? We have input from the planning board, we have road conditions, which is kind of a gray area, but what else would we want to look at for criteria?
Recording of the limit of municipal liability.
Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna recommend that we take a vote on whether or not we want to, at this point in time, be involved in a review of the 3 pending cases that are going before the CBA. Does everybody feel like that's the appropriate next step?
Yeah, sure.
Tyler, Ben?
Yep.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we proceed with the review of the 3 applicants for new development as required by RSA.
I second that.
All in favor? All opposed?
4 in favor.
Yeah. Okay, so when will we do that? We do it at the next meeting, that's June 18th, that's one night before the ZBA. So how will we get planning board input, and then how will we react to that planning board input?
When's the next planning board meeting?
It's,
This week, isn't it?
it is this week, isn't it?
It's the 11th,
11?
yes.
Oh, a week?
Next week.
So all the,
Sorry,
No.
13th?
It's Monday.
yes, the 13th,
13th.
yes.
so we just need for Joanna to put it onto the planning board,
Agenda.
agenda. All the plans, just for everybody's, all the plans, if you go onto the website, they're under the zoning board. You can download them and look at the plans and what they're looking to do. So those can be reviewed ahead of the, our meeting on the 18th. They're up there.
So,
There's not necessarily plans for
There is for the house lot that's being built.
For the Moores Road one?
I think that's the
That's that
one.
the one, yeah, because that's got other stuff going on, right? Is that setbacks or is it just the road issue for that one?
It's probably setbacks by the looks of it.
Yeah, where there's no history of this, I don't know what level of detail we can promise online for these cases. You know what I mean? But everything we have will be there, but
So again, I'm sorry, we're gonna make a decision on the 18th that we're then gonna get to the, or,
the
Some
ZBA can do its business with or without your decision and input. They may like to have it, but it is actually very little value in a variance criteria.
Okay.
So there's no deadline about the ZBA meeting. There's just the cost to the people that are waiting to move forward on these projects or started these projects, in one case anyway.
yeah, okay,
That's what's pushing us,
okay.
calendar-wise.
I'll just share my final opinion that I think we're shooting from the hip. I don't think it's a fair thing to do. Personally, I am not experienced enough to look at plans and evaluate them, so we're probably gonna have to spend some time on that on the 18th. Okay, anything else on that topic? All right. So, with apologies, we're 10 minutes late for the public hearing. So, we're all set. I can just go in and open that public hearing, right, Chris?
Yep.
Okay, at this point in time, we're going to open the public hearing on the barn preservation easement. Purpose of this public hearing is just those for the board to hear comment from the public on this. This doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be making any decisions tonight. In fact, I don't think we're gonna be prepared to, but we'll open it up and.
Thank you. Romeo, before you start, let me bring everybody up to date. I think you have a copy of this in your package.
Yeah.
We were able to identify specifically which structures we're talking about, and that was one of the open questions we had. Sure, so I can tell you what want to follow along. On the tax card under extra features valuation, which is in the middle of the page right here.
You too, Chris.
The structures involved here are barn 2-story, barn 1-story loft, and barn 1-story. The first, second, and fifth lines of that section.
A barn 1-story too.
Yep. So that's as best we can identify at this point. We're gonna have our assessors go out to the property and just verify that we got the sizes all right. And we're really talking about apples and apples, but
Okay.
we have increasing confidence that that's what we're all talking about.
Okay, so just the property, you've got the big green one. And then there's like a smaller white one in front of it.
Yes.
And then what's the third one?
I think the first two are just first floor and second floor of the barn.
Oh, okay.
That's what we think.
Oh, okay, and then so you've got barn 1st story, barn 2nd story loft, and then barn 2nd story. So which two are the green ones? Would be?
The green one with the cupola on it.
No, I mean I'm just trying to relate these to the visual
To what, that's
going
what,
by your property.
that's what I'm trying to do. The first two, barn 2-story, I believe is a first and second floor
Of the green barn.
of the green barn.
Okay.
And then barn 1-story
Is the little white one.
is the white one, the carriage house.
Okay. Okay,
Well, first of all, I guess in the nutshell of the RSA is that the state understands that New Hampshire rural architecture is unique to the extent that we have covered bridges, barns, and farms stand places that are, help to make the beauty of New Hampshire what it is. Unfortunately, some of these barns are falling down. They're not being taken care of because there's a lot of money involved in it. Won't get any examples, but we've seen some barns have come down in Nottingham in the last few years. So the idea is that by allowing property tax exemptions, then that will allow the owner of the barns to preserve them, or at least take the money that would have gone into property taxes to go into preserving the barns, to keep them and the rural character of New Hampshire alive. That being said, just so that I know, does everybody know where this property is? Okay. I've prepared a handout to you. The first page is an estimate of what the costs are to continue to preserve the barn and the carriage house. As you can see, it does get extensive. Some of the pictures that I've provided also show the degree of deterioration of part of the barn and the carriage house. Rotted window sills, rotted barn frames, window frames, missing panes of glass because the glazing, by the way, is putty. Some people don't know what glazing is. I didn't for a while. As that glazing dries and hardens and pops off, then some of the windows fall out, window panes fall out. Some of those panes are probably older than a bunch of us put together. The main house was built in 1756, so that's 262 years old. And you can see the pictures of the carriage house, which is the white building with the rusty roof and the peeling paint. And then at the beginning, you'll see the estimates of working on the barn and then on the carriage house. One of the criteria in the checklist of the RSA asks if, and I have to go and look back on it, if you'll excuse me for a moment. Well, we can go through the checklist. I don't know how you want to conduct this, so I'm presenting my estimate of costs, pictures that show the deterioration, and some of my neighbors saying that they think that it's a good idea. So perhaps if you want to ask questions, and we'll go back and forth that way, or
Why don't you go through this first, and then we can open it up to questions. And this is really more for the public to comment as well.
okay. I've kind of presented it. I was going to say we could go to the checklist and answer the questions in the checklist if you wanted.
Okay?
But and Chris, if you want to run this thing, I don't know.
Let's go to the
Well,
checklist.
you gotta, in the process that you have all laid out, you gotta make an assessment based on something like this checklist to decide if you wanna grant an easement, and if so, how much. There's a, you know, you're talking about, not a set dollar amount, but a percentage of the assessed value. So, that's what the purpose of this thing is. You don't have to decide whether it meets all of these tonight, but perhaps Romeo could make his case that they do.
Yeah, based on those points, because
Sure.
that's not something you provided in the packet, right?
Well, no, it's because it's on the actual RSA, the abatement evaluation.
Yeah, but do you want to speak to this, to some of the points on here?
Sure, if you want, we can go through them item by item. So the first one is the structure of local or regional importance in the terms of cultural history and telling the story of the agricultural or development of the community, and/or is it recognized in local historical publications or in the town master plan? The property was built in 1756. I do believe that there's some truth to the story that some local farmers, Minutemen, went to, I believe it's called Fort Constitution, which is on the point of, darn, where's that Coast Guard pier by the Wentworth by the Sea?
Newcastle?
Newcastle, thank you. I always forget that name. They went to that fort one night, overpowered British soldiers, took as much shot and gunpowder as they could get, ferried it back up to Nottingham Square, divided it among other farmers that were willing to fight, and then they marched to the battles of Bunker Hill and Breed Hill and fought the war and for our independence of our country. So is the structure of local or regional importance. It had a bit of a play in the independence of our country from the British. It's a barn. I know that the Fernals, not the current generation of Fernals, but maybe back 1 or 2 generations, raised chickens in the barn. And the eggs, they were egg layers, and they used the eggs for pharmaceutical rather than for consumption. If you go to the doctor, and they always have you fill out a little questionnaire, are you allergic to eggs? The reason is because a lot of the pharmaceuticals are grown in eggs. So if you're allergic to eggs and they give you a shot that came from eggs, you could have an adverse reaction. So this is part of the history of this area. At one time, the Nottingham and Raymond area provided something on the order of like 20,000 eggs a day for pharmaceutical companies. So the barn has a history of agricultural endeavors for the area. I would check that as a yes. Recognition potential is the next box. Does the structure meet determination of eligibility criteria for listing in the New Hampshire State Register of Historical Places, the National Register of Historical Places, or other designation, individually or as a contributing to a larger property or area? I do believe that since that property was built in 1756, and since militiamen mustered there, that this, and the General Butler, who was one of the generals of the Revolutionary War, so I guess that property would possibly be considered for National Historical Register, so I would check yes again. Excuse me. Formal recognition. Is the structure listed in the National Register of Historical Places, or is it a contributing structure? Well, I'll finish the question. Is the structure listed in the New Hampshire State Register of Historical Places, or is it a contributing structure to a listed property? That's probably a no, because I don't think it is on the National Historical Register, nor is it on a local one. Next one is rural character. Is the structure a familiar local landmark? Yeah.
That's pretty obvious.
So I'll just check that one as a yes. Scenic routes. Is the structure on scenic or cultural byway or designated scenic road? I think anybody driving around Nottingham sees all sorts of beautiful buildings, barns, farms that have been around for generation past into generation. Although Ledge Farm Road itself is not designated, as far as I understand, as a scenic road.
I think it might be.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I think it is in the
well.
town.
And I guess we're gonna check a yes on that.
Yeah.
Public support. Is there public interest or community support for the structure's preservation? Letters of support from individuals, organizations, and specialists. There's 3 neighbors, although I did type up the letter because they weren't comfortable with printing something out or didn't know what to say. But you can see from David Fernal, Chuck and Alyssa Belrose, and Trey Sleeper that they concur that it's a good idea to preserve the barn and the carriage house because it lends to the rural characteristic of Nottingham or of just plain old rural New Hampshire.
And I will just add, just for the record, Dawn, that I received an email from Liz Katowski supporting this as well. She wasn't able to make the meeting.
Integrity, present use. Is the structure on a working farm include current use or agricultural designation such as tree farm, or otherwise used for agricultural purposes? You know, the reason I bought that property to begin with was because in my mind, I always thought, gee, it would be so cool to have a farm. And it is. And it's a lot of work. And it's not just that it's so much work, it's a everyday work. No holidays, no weekends, no 4th of July. You don't take the day off. You have to let the chickens out. You have to make sure they get feed and water. You got to protect them from the foxes. And I've had to shoot one or two.
Are you still having someone hay it?
Yes, it's still being hayed by the Fernals.
Okay. That's an agricultural purpose.
Community example, is the structure a good representative of its type of barn? And is it a good example of historic construction methods or materials? Some of you have not been in the barn, but it is what they call a post and beam construction. And it was, I'd hate to try to build something like that because it's, I mean, some of those posts are like 10 by 10 in size and they're 25 or 30 feet long. I don't think you could find that lumber today. So it is a good example of past construction. Unique example, is the structure now an unusual or rare surviving type of barn or outbuilding in the area? Or is it unique because of its architecture or builder? Or is it part of a unique landscape setting? I don't know that it's unique, however, it is typical of the rural farmsteads that we have in New Hampshire, and it's worth preserving. On the next page, under integrity, is the structure, if the structure is being used for agricultural purposes, does it retain its historic exterior appearance and integrity? Or if the structure has been adapted for other use, such as residential or professional, has its historic exterior appearance been maintained, and does it retain integrity? Other than adding the cupola about 10 years ago and painting it green instead of white, nothing else has really been done to change the exterior except for replacing rotted clapboard and scraping old paint and priming it and putting on new paint. So there's been no change to the physical structure itself, other than the cupola. Quality repair, will the property owner's planned maintenance, repair, and/or restoration work adhere to the Secretary of the Interior standards of rehabilitation? I've given you a list of what I expect that I'm going to be spending on renovating the property, and also what I've already paid on renovating the property. So a lot of those windows are just rotted completely. They're going to have to be replaced. Windows are popping out all the time because the glazing has hardened, and cracked, and fallen out, and the panes aren't staying in. And so I replaced 2 large ones. If you're looking at these pictures, this page over here that has that top one, I replaced 2 of those in the last couple of months, and darned if 2 more didn't pop out. And so it's just the work of either getting up on a ladder and scraping the putty and reglazing it with new panes, or trying to take the frames out and doing it on a table inside the barn. It's meticulous work. And while you might look at these things and say, wow, that's kind of a lot of money to pay for fixing a window like a 3x4 at $150, I can't even get a glazer to come out to the property. They want me to bring them all in to get them reworked. And a lot of them have broken panes or missing panes. So it's get up there, remove the whole frame, bring it to the glazer. They work on it, replace the broken glass if it's broken, or replace it if it's missing, glaze it, and then I have to go back and pick it up, strip the paint, and paint it, and then install it. Or hire somebody to do it. And these are more or less hire somebody to do it prices, because I'm not that good at all this kind of stuff. That's kind of where I'm at right now, but I'll answer questions. I really just don't know how to proceed along with this request.
Romeo, question on the bond. You've got repair the post support.
Yeah.
Having been in the bond, I know that there's a couple of posts that need support.
Yes.
Is that what these are
Yes.
fixing?
Yeah.
Is that like a total replacement, or is that just sure it up?
One of them has been broken. I have to say I did it accidentally. And so I'll have to lift up it. Can you imagine just think of a divided light window and use those divided mullions as post and beam. One of the posts was broken. So I'll have to lift up the other beams, replace the post, and then bring it back down.
Other questions?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions. First of all, it looks great. From the road, it looks like you've done a fantastic job. It shows ownership, pride, and all that. And someone who's into history and all that stuff, thank you for, keeping up with the property and making it, it is a town landmark. So on behalf of everybody here, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Getting into my questions, though, how many individuals have you had look at this, and how many estimates have you got? Have you just gone with one person, or have you gone with multiple vendors to get estimates?
First of all, I'm having difficulty finding anybody that will glaze the windows unless I bring them to them.
That's a work of art.
I have, at my disposal, I have a man lift, or we'll call it a person lift. And I suggested that I could have that at their disposal, and they said, we're still not gonna do it. You have to bring it in. And I'm looking around for somebody that might do it that way, so it will cut the cost of time. I've talked to some people that I know in the trades, and they're giving me really just estimates of, it's gonna cost you 80 to 100 bucks an hour. We're not gonna tell you how much it's gonna cost, because we don't know what is gonna be involved in doing some of the work.
Until they get it, right?
This is really a time and material job as opposed to a bid job. You asked me something that made me think of one other thing. That picture that's in back of you is part of Nottingham Square, which this house abuts Nottingham Square. The original center of Nottingham was there, or is there. The first building on the left is where Chuck Belrose lives, and that building was built the same year as this one, 1756. It didn't turn out to be a vibrant center of the community, because the community was more farm-oriented, so there was no central place. But that was, at the beginning, thought to be, that was gonna be the center of town. So that's really about that.
Was the barn, typically in that day and age, the house goes up, barn goes up with it, right around the same time?
I couldn't tell you, but when it was actually done, but generally, my understanding of construction during that era was, house was built, barn was built, addition to the house, and then stables or stalls. And and I understand at one time in the past, that was what do you call it, a way station, a tavern, and in the garage portion, there still are these leather-lined ovals about this big to where the draft horses were brought in, tied. They would poke their head through that leather-lined oval, and a chute from above brought hay, so they could just reach over and pull the hay and then eat the hay. Those are still there. That's all still there, as well as a lot of the leather straps, the harnesses that they needed, the collars and everything like that. It's still there. Yep.
I would say, as Ben did, I mean, thank you for what you're doing, and, you know, I wish a lot more people would have the enthusiasm and do things like this, because you go by some places that you can just picture in the back of your mind that that must have been a beautiful structure in its day, and they just, some of them are falling over, and, you know, so
Yep.
appreciate what you're doing, and sounds like there's a lot of history on that property.
There, I often have people coming by asking if they can walk around with these magnetometer things or whatever, and they don't even dig up the lead shot anymore because there's tons of that. They get buckles, buttons, stirrups, coins, and some of they share with me. I could have brought them in. The lead shot was generally about a 50 caliber or larger round lead ball. And I think we all know that they used to have to load it from the what do they call it, barrel end?
Muzzle.
Muzzle, yeah. Muzzle loader, right, yeah, sure. Plenty of lead shot out there.
Are the barns insured?
Yes, everything's
Yeah.
insured. Has to be. If that barn started to burn, I can't imagine how fast it would go. Yeah, it's insured.
Before we, unless there's anything else you want to share with us, we'll open it up to the
Okay.
other folks here if they have any comments. You're gonna have to come up to the table and state your name and your address, please.
So my name's Jason, I live at 46 Whitesgrove Road, and also property over at 35 Raymond Road. And I think it's a great idea. I didn't grow up here as a kid, but I was here for the summers, and I now live in town, and there's places like that that would be the same if it was missing, or if it continued to deteriorate. I think it's in the community's best interest to take the structures like that out of town. Once they're gone, they're gone. And like a lot of cases, and a large structure like that, it'll get to a certain point where you can't recover it. It's deteriorated to a point where it's no longer cost effective. This is in great shape. It's definitely, for anybody who's driven up 156, if it was, it's worth, the whole property's worth preserving.
I'm up to 28 Tuck Road, I've been to the barn a couple of times, and it's really, it's amazing is what it is. You said, I'm in real estate, I don't see construction like that, even in some of the older barns that I've been in. Barnstead, out in Henniker and stuff. I'm surprised it's still standing in the same shape as it is, so I think it's
No bad jokes, Steve.
It's the only kind he has.
I believe I need to remind the Board of Selectmen that there were no bad jokes, there's bad audiences. Stephen Soroff, $32 Dam. I want to thank Romeo for the barn and his use of the yard for the annual blueberry pancake breakfast, which the Historic Society is having the second Sunday in August coming up. And we invite you all to come, please. But the reason I'm here now, I love the barn and I want it preserved, but I want to set a little bit of Nottingham history correct. For the longest time, there's a wonderful story that Romeo was nice enough to share. And I want to set this record straight. The Battle of Lexington occurred on April 19th, 1775. At that point, troops gathered at near the barn at Nottingham Square and did march within 24 hours to Medford. They arrived after the Battle of Lexington and conquered. Many of them went home. Later on, some of those who stayed did participate in the Battle of Bunker Hill or Breeds Hill. So it wasn't, they didn't march to that battle. They marched from Lexington and conquered. And it's just an incredible story of how they marched in that time frame to Medford. So that's the reason I want to set that record straight.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Come on down, state your name and address, please. You have to come forward and state your name and your address. Sorry. It's for Dawn.
Raylene Shippey Rice, 38 Garland Road. It sounds like there's a lot of support for this project. State that I too am in support of it. But I also wonder how much this RSA or this availability of restoration and tax relief is known among members of, first of all, Nottingham, but also New Hampshire, because I've seen a number of barns collapse around Nottingham 40 years ago, as well as throughout the state. And I just would like to see if there's some way, at some point, that the information could be
Peggy Tucker, 32 Oak Dam. Just echoes the question. How many, do we have any other participants in Nottingham that have taken advantage of this? And,
Not in the time that I've been here.
okay, and is it contingent upon, like, if you give that person like a tax break, that it has to go back to the property?
Yes, that's one of the criteria.
That's one of the criteria.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that question. There is information in the RSA that says that if I haven't, or in this case, for me, if I haven't put money back into restoring the barn, in other words, I'm just enjoying the tax credit and not doing anything after, that upon a notice, and it's in the paperwork that in the RSA, I'm going to say it's 60-day notice. If nothing's done, then another 30 days, the tax exemption could be revoked. And penalties paid, plus whatever credit was granted, would have to be repaid. So that's the answer to that question. It is in there. I could find it. It shows you if you want.
Okay, anyone else? All right, if there's no further comments, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, just to tie off with Romeo, so Chris, the two things that were outstanding were what buildings were included, and we've got that now, correct?
We are almost certain, but we need to confirm it, yep.
Okay.
And, yeah, I would suggest you give us a couple weeks to get with Avatar to come back with an absolute certainty on that, and perhaps their recommendation before you make a decision, but
Okay.
I don't think you have any other gaps in your,
Is all we need is just the square footage of the buildings?
yeah, and their Avatar's gonna recommend an area of land around the barn that you would use to maintain the barn. It's common with easements to have not just the, you know, structure itself, but the land that supports the structure, so we'll get a good measure of that, so there'll be an impact on the land value as well as the building value would be negligible, but just so we can document it exactly right. Those are the two pieces that I am aware that we are missing.
We couldn't just go ahead and approve it. We're not approving the dollar amount, we're just approving whether or not this, the easement and then the percentage based on the checklist.
Yeah, you could do that and turn it over to us, and we'll figure out the rest if you want.
Right.
If you're comfortable making a decision,
And the other
right, there's no
question,
reason not to.
right, and rather than hold it up.
No reason not to set the percentage tonight if they wanted to, right? I mean, we don't know the numerator, but they don't have to if they don't want to, right?
No, I don't.
Yeah, so you can,
Personally, I'd rather have the full picture.
it's up to you.
That's
I'm sorry, what was your preference?
To just, not to make a decision tonight, to just have the full picture. That's just me.
Yeah, I know, I think we should go through this RSA checklist and, you know, assign the point values and so on, and get firm numbers lined up, and then
Yeah.
vote on it after.
Yeah, I addressed, under the RSA 79D, like Delta, sub Roman numeral 7, an annual inspection shall be conducted by the Nottingham Heritage Commission with prior notice in writing to the property owner for compliance with the easement. If based on said inspection, the property owner fails to maintain the structure in conformity with the agreement, causes the structure to significantly deteriorate or be demolished or removed, or fails to implement the repair or maintenance plan within 2 years of its scheduled date, the owner shall be notified in writing. If the owner fails to commence the repairs or plan within 3 months of written notification, the easement shall be terminated and a penalty assessed in accordance with RSA 79-D, like Delta, :8. So that was to answer that question as to, is this a freebie or is it, you gotta work on it?
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is in the RSA on D4, Romeo, if you have it in front of you, it says that we should receive this by April 15th of the tax year. So while we may approve it, I think what I'd like is clarification. Does it affect 2018 or does it not go into effect until 2019?
I will double check that for you.
Because the way I'm reading it, it looks like it wouldn't be till 2019.
Lacking a heritage commission, who would,
Historical Society?
We'd use the building inspector for a structural
okay.
evaluation and that kind of thing, what the skill set would be.
And then, is there a timeline, or will there be a timeline?
For,
The work that Romeo would be doing? I think you just said that there has to be a timeline, right?
I think it's 2 years, that you have to start doing the work within 2 years.
Okay.
I think that's in the statute, that 2 years, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the statute,
Yeah.
Roman numeral 7.
Okay. All right, so Romeo, Chris, just keep in touch with Chris. Okay.
We do.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. All right, thank you. All right, that takes us through our agenda. Our only remaining business is to go into non-public.
We got a couple other things that I plugged earlier that I wanted to come back to, but
Yeah.
in public session.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, first open issue is the request from the planning board. There was 4 points in their note. The only one that we really need to discuss tonight is the question of striping of 152 and the lane widths. They had asked that you ask the DOT to set the lane widths at no more than 10 or 11 feet.
Are you guys gonna stay, or are you,
And I heard from, I think, one of you or two, maybe one of you with a question, but I didn't get your consensus that you really wanted me to do that like that. So since we had a meeting tonight, I didn't push you on it, but they are in the middle of the work. So if we're gonna ask DOT to modify their plan, we need to do it.
Okay, so they wanted to
Clear?
increase the shoulder area that would make it easier for walkers and bikers, essentially.
That's their intent, yes. I don't know what the actual effect on the ground of that is gonna be. We have different ideas about what the lane widths are right now. I think
Yep.
it's probably different across the length of the whole thing,
Sure,
but
sure.
it could look like no change at all. It could look like a change of a couple of feet maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't identify.
So I think what I saw that you said is that they're not gonna increase, it's unlikely that they're going to increase the shoulder.
Not this year, no. I mean, they're paving today. It's not, you don't do that. You know, you don't make the road wider
Right.
on short
So it would
notice.
be more of a bringing it in and reducing the travel lane.
Just the painting of the lines.
Yeah,
is the
exactly.
last piece that might theoretically be
Okay.
amended at this point.
And is that something that can be done safely without impacting, the width of the, the travel lane and the safety of vehicles? That was my only question.
I can't answer that question. I'm not an expert in that stuff.
I think it's up to DOT.
Yeah, it's their road, so
I mean, this goes to, in the master plan was to widen 2 feet on the state roads. And what the planning board subcommittee determined is that widening of 2 feet means that's gonna be costly. And what Dirk explained was that DOT is actually doing what's being proposed, narrowing the lanes to create more of a buffer and not widening the roads because of studies that they have.
They're already doing it in this particular.
They're already doing it in not in this particular case, in other state
Others,
roads
okay.
that they're working on.
So if they can do safely, if they can do it safely, then it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. We just, put a letter together and say where possible, narrow it to a safety, does, amount that's safe, whatever, 10.5, whatever that is,
The
10.5.
one thing I noticed, I made a point of looking at watching the road while I was driving home a few nights ago. And it seems to me, just from observation, I didn't get out and measure, but it seems to me the actual pavement tends to be wider on the southern end than it is when you get up towards Northwood.
Okay.
And the width varies in places. It's narrower in some stretches and it gets ridiculously wide in others. Are they actually gonna pave to a consistent width? Because if they still do that mush and waver, then moving the stripes in is still gonna result in uneven shoulders. Which, I mean, I don't bicycle anymore, but if I did, this would not be my road of choice, regardless of where the stripe is, It's still rough and uneven and just as unsafe for pedestrians. And a pedestrian isn't gonna walk closer to the traffic because the edge of the pavement is, moving around. Nobody's gonna wanna do that. They'll still choose to walk in the dirt or the grass. It just seems like it's all very inconsistent right now.
I would expect that they look at this as an overlay project. They're just covering what's there to extend its life. They're not.
Yeah, it looks like
You
they're
can see
fixing
that,
culverts
you can
and-
see that from their work, their prep work.
Yeah.
They're cleaning and grubbing out where they need to. They replace the culverts, but I don't see any changes in paved width coming. That I would think would be a much bigger production.
Yeah.
And can significantly increase the cost. Because there's no base, there's no road base in that wider area. So this is just a layer over the top of what's there. Widening pavement would be a different animal.
Okay, so is anybody opposed to having Chris send him a letter or having a conversation with him about trying to paint those lines to afford more space for walkers and bikers?
I have some concerns in regards to safety on that road. That particular road, as everybody knows, is becoming more and more traveled. And it's a cut across road from 125 to Route 4 for truckers. You narrow a lane to accommodate bikers and walkers. Now you're posing a problem for the truckers or other vehicles to stay in that. And we all know, come around the corner, sometimes they hug that yellow line, sometimes they hug the white line, and, you know, I'm just surprised there hasn't been more accidents out there as it is. I can't, I mean, granted, it's their road, so they're gonna do it, we don't have a say in that, correct?
I think it's the kind of thing you can push them one way or the other. It might help move a needle somewhere. I mean, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, but
Right.
if it provides cover for them somehow to do something that they wanna do, or if it brings something to their attention, there's no harm in it. I don't think we're single-handedly gonna change their mind about
Right,
much,
right.
but,
I can't support narrowing a lane. Just for the sheer safety.
Yeah, I mean, I share the, you know, I was one that asked the question as well, right? But I guess I would defer to the. Right. I do think the point about trucks is well.
So scary. I wouldn't be walking out there myself. I mean, like Ben said, I've been cut across there all the time, coming from Northwood, and, you know, going to 125, and everybody's using it too. I mean, they've got big trucks and,
Yep.
you know.
Loggers, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
well, 152, they got logging trucks
Yeah.
right there.
I don't think even 2 feet would do anything either.
Now, when they're talking about 2 feet, is that one side or 1 foot on each side?
It would, yeah, it would be like 1 foot on each side, but that would
How
be,
would that really make a difference?
I don't know.
it's just trying to create that, a little bit of a buffer lane. But then you, the cost of that would be, it would never get done.
Right.
Do you want to vote?
I'm just, you know, I'm just thinking about our options here, you know, doing nothing is one option, right? Asking them to go ahead and do it is another option. It's just trying to figure out if, it makes it more complicated for voting, is if there was a third option of, to Ben's point, trying to understand first the safety implications and then making, you know, a request based on that. And I know time's rather important.
if you're going to speak, you should do so tomorrow morning, because they're paving, and they're gonna paint right behind that, so.
And I think DOT's not gonna, if it's gonna create more of a safety, then DOT's gonna say, no, we can't do that. So, but
Well, I think you're weighing pedestrian and bike safety against vehicle safety. I don't think it's,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
well, we know that there's bikes, the state road is on bike maps in New Hampshire. So I think the question to DOT is, or the question to DOT is, the state road is a bike road, it's on the bike maps. There's concern for safety of the bikes. It's been proposed by the planning board subcommittee, and we're asking you how to best address these safety concerns. I think that's what we do.
What I would like to suggest is, and this isn't the right wording, but to ask them to consider, placement of, not the right language, you can clean it up, but consider placement of the lines to improve safety or increase safety for bikers and walkers, as long as it's not sacrificing or creating greater risk to vehicular traffic, including cars and trucks. I gotta be honest, I hadn't thought about the trucks. And that would be a question in my mind. So I would want to put it that way to them. And basically what it's saying is, think about this, but think about the balance, and we know it's your decision anyway, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the planning board committee asked you to ask for something very specific, and all I can do is give you that. I don't. They seem to have a sense of what it was gonna take to push DOT in one direction or another. That was what was reported to you from Dirk, so.
Yeah, I mean, they talked to DOT too,
Yeah.
so.
They did?
Yeah, that's,
And so what feedback did they get from DOT on the safety of it?
The thing was basically was have your selectmen send us a letter requesting
Yeah.
that they move the lines.
But they're asking us to ask DOT to do something without telling us, you know, we talked to DOT, this is what they told
Right.
us, this is, you know, I mean,
Right, yeah, all I remember from that conversation was the fact that they have been doing this in other towns without any major consequence, so.
okay. All right, so the question on the table is, do we ask DOT straight out to change the painting of the lines to increase the safety of bikers and walkers?
where possible.
Where possible. I'll take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Could you make it?
I'll make a motion that we, send a letter to DOT as the planning board subcommittee, so required, with DOT making the decision about where it's applicable. For safety.
Can I just nitpick?
Okay.
Did planning board require or ask? Can the planning board actually require us to do
They
something?
asked. Did I say required?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
I know, I'm
asked.
a pain.
Asked.
You got that,
You
Don?
got that, Don?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Okay. Next topic, Chris.
Highway truck.
Highway truck.
Highway truck.
We budgeted for a new truck within the operating budget at town meeting, what we were calling a 1-ton. Somebody stood up at town meeting and said, you don't have enough money to do what you want to do, and they amended the budget.
Yeah, how much was the budget amended for?
Went from 65 to 85.
Did it go to 85? Because that's what I was looking at, because I got sticker shock when I looked at the $83,000.
Turns out whoever stood up in town meeting knew more than we did at the time. And,
So we did increase it 20,000?
Who was that person?
Because we increased it 20,000.
yes.
Okay,
Well, the voters did.
right, right.
Yes.
The townspeople,
Yes.
voters, legislative body.
Anyway, so Ben has been shepherding that process, because he actually has a sense of what it takes to purchase one of these trucks, and it's around 20,000 more than we budgeted, so. Why don't you walk everybody through what you've been up to? He's been working with the guys at the garage and talking through all that. The four of us haven't all sat around the table yet, but
Yeah.
I'm confident that they know what
Just
they're doing.
basically the reason for the increase for the particular truck, you were looking at a 1-ton truck. That was not going to suit the needs of the town, because the current truck that they have is a 2012 F-350, has had a cracked frame twice and welded. So, that being said, that truck is not suitable for extra work, so to speak. So my proposal was, increase it an extra $20,000 to get the appropriate truck, which would be a 10.5 or an F-550. I went to two vendors. I went to Framingham Ford down in Massachusetts and Hillsborough Ford in New Hampshire. And Framingham Ford with two different plans. One would be an electric plow, electric dump lift, and electric sander. You know, it was considerably high. The truck was $10,000 more just for the truck, cab, and chassis than Hillsborough. Then you add all the equipment and all that stuff on there, it was over budget. So I went to Hillsborough Ford, and he gave me the first option of everything electric was $71,000 complete. Talking to the gentleman down at the garage, and based on my experience as well, a central hydraulic system was more suitable to their needs. It has more lifting power. It works faster as far as the sander goes and getting the plow up and down and maneuvered. That was an additional $12,000. So with that being said, everything decorated with electric was $71,000. Going with the central hydraulic system, it brought it to $82,000, like 500 and some change, which is still under budget. So with some of that money, I figured we can get a graphic, put graphics on it and all that. With the $82,000, as you notice, it comes with lights, and I made it a purpose of saying that, you know, we have a lot of dirt roads, back roads in town. Some roads you can't see around the corner. I want that thing lit up like a Christmas tree, so you can see it coming, you know, to reduce the liability for accidents and so on. It does not come with a wing. The garage personnel did not want a wing on that truck, and I don't think it'd be really suitable for that truck anyway. But as it stands right now, the truck that Hillsborough has in stock, and Framingham didn't, Hillsborough has it in stock, would be 6 to 8 weeks delivery versus 19 weeks. Ordering it this year will save an additional $2,500. And that's why I thought Hillsborough would be a better option to go with, because they have one in stock already. It's not exactly the paint job that we have right now, but it's pretty close. It's still green.
Okay, so what would you like from us at this point? Do you have any additional discussions?
Yeah, well, if you have questions or concerns, fire away, otherwise turn us loose to order it.
And that's gonna be able to sand too?
Yes, it comes with a sander. That's another thing. It comes with a plow.
Yeah.
It comes with a sander, a 3-yard sander, which is bigger than the sander that's on the 1-ton right now. You can handle it. And then, like I said, it's got the hydraulic dump body, even the sander's hydraulic, and the plow. And it's all central. It's going to operate much more smoothly than an electric one.
Do you know what the warranties are for the?
Typically, a warranty on the cab and chassis is, you know, the factory, standard factory. As far as the central hydraulics, I would have to get back to you on that, but I think that's typically a year. 1 to 3 years, I believe.
But that's all serviceable at the shed, like if they have to replace a hose or something?
Well, it's my understanding, I think his name Brian, he does all that stuff. Now,
He can handle hydraulics.
he can handle that. Whether that voids the warranty or not on that particular piece of equipment, like the hydraulic system, we'd have to look into that. At least for the first year or two, however long the warranty is.
Right. I'm thinking like when it's out of warranty,
Then,
it's user level maintenance,
yeah.
you know, for the most part.
And just so you know, that the particular truck that we're looking at is an F-550. The newer trucks, the cab, fenders, and all that stuff are all aluminum now. So, less rust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
More
are there a
dense.
trade-in value on the truck that we have?
That's my understanding, we're keeping that, right?
Keeping it, we're running it into the ground. It's not worth anything.
Yeah.
We're gonna run it into the ground.
Break the frame a few more times. Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, they've repurposed it enough times now. It's a pretty good functioning utility, you know, summertime utility vehicle. They've, you know, they've pieced it together enough times. It's just not big enough to plow with. You know, we're using it mostly on the smaller dirt roads, the private roads and intersections, and it's not enough.
A truck of that size, that particular truck, would be more suitable for paved parking lots.
Yeah.
And intersections, like you mentioned. These dirt roads are killing it.
All right, does anybody have any concerns about telling Chris and Ben to go
No.
ahead, move forward?
Nope.
Make a motion that we go ahead and proceed with the Hillsborough Ford, get the truck as soon as possible.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, what else, Chris?
That's it. Thanks, Ben, for doing all that homework.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you for having the foresight of telling me. Because I was like, he wants to give us more money?
Well, I mean, I have a very similar truck to that, and I know what I had to go through plowing these roads, and seeing that little truck do it, and then hearing the frame crack twice. You had to have something bigger, so in order to do that, unfortunately, you had to raise the funds.
Okay, hey, Tom, we're about to go into non-public. Was there something that you wanted?
I almost finished the listing. Thank you. I just hung out because I had an interesting.
Feel free to sit in the kitchen. All right, we're gonna now go into non-public to discuss some personnel issues under A&L. There'll be no further business when we come out of non-public, so we will be adjourning the meeting at that point.
All right, I'll make a motion, we enter non-public session per RSA 91A:3, section 2A and L.
Second.
All in favor, roll call.
I, Ben Bartlett.
Hi, Tyler Eaton.
Hi, Charlene Anderson.
Aye, Donna Danis.
Aye, Tony Dumas.